Hey, what's up? This is Chris from Audio Discovery, and today I wanted to talk about sort of the layout of the fretboard and the way that the guitar sort of logic works. Now, this is a conversation that I was having with a friend of mine who was interested in knowing how the layout sort of works for kind of knowing some of the music theory, but realistically, it's more like a music logic, right? So, anyways, I wanted to take sort of like this lo-fi thing because my system is all a little out of disarray, and I just haven't really been able to sort of get. So that's why the videos haven't been coming out, and I haven't really been able to sort of set it up where I'm comfortable and happy with it. So this is going to be cell phone shot video, and hopefully the audio is okay. So that's why we have the acoustic guitar out, and also my friend plays acoustic, so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to sort of make this more applicable to him. So we want to start out talking about first off, I want to talk about the open chords, so the ones that are sort of, here that we learn originally as accompaniment, typically for songs that are typical to, what we would call like easy. I kind of want to just use these euphemisms to sort of not like denigrate them, but these are kind of more of the like simple things that people learn early on. And it's, if you think about it, kind of interesting. Like this is sort of like guitar culture and guitar lore, right? You learn sort of like passed down from from guitarist to guitarist. It's like, oh well, let's just start you off with let's start you off with the easy stuff. So maybe start with an acoustic guitar, and then you can graduate to an electric guitar, which realistically, like acoustic guitar is a lot more difficult to play than an electric guitar. Like the strings are more, they are tense. Typically you're playing a heavier gauge string. I tend to feel that the electric guitars are a lot more easy to play than an acoustic guitar. Digression. I apologize. Okay, so we're going to get into the logic of the open chords to start off with, and so if you notice that, so we'll start off with an E major, and I'm starting off with an E major because it's kind of uh, E is like a kind of an easy chord to talk about, but what it does is it kind of explains something that people know, like when it's a beginner will sort of know, like, okay, well if I play this note, right? So I have this E major, right? So it's basically open. So if we go, down this way, we go open string, two, and then one, right? So we have this kind of looking, finger pattern, right? Now, what happens if we want to play an F? Typically, the F is this thing, and so we look at, okay, we want to do 1, 3, 3. And then this thing here. Well, if you look at that, it's just sliding over. And if you wanted to play like a bar chord, right? Bar chord, they're like, as a beginner, a lot of people they go, well, I have to lay my fingers down this way, and then I have to put like, so this is an A bar chord, right? An A major. And I'm going this, and I have to put 7, and then 6. Well, like, why don't you extrapolate from that's this, this here. So essentially what you're doing is you're just playing an open E chord with a new, this thing called the nut, right? And then you've got like, now you're making your finger, is basically just replicating that. And then now you've got the same thing. So essentially you can play any major chord along the, so now 12 major chords, right? You have F or E, F, G, G, or F sharp, and then G sharp, A, onto the next. Okay, so that's essentially the logic for a major chord that's in this position here, right? With the first, with this first string being sort of what's called the root note, and then wanting to play a fifth, and then the octave, and then the root. So there's a couple of different ways of using those same strings and playing a major chord. but we'll get to that, and we want to just sort of talk about the logic of those open chords. Okay, so let's talk about A, right? So A major. Okay, so you're basically playing open string from A, skipping the top one, and then going 0, 2, 2, and 2, right? So it's this. So this sort of introduces this weird thing about the guitar, which is that the tuning is typically symmetric. I think is a decent word. It's got an organization. So when you tune your guitar strings, you're talking about from 5, from the 5th fret, those two strings, the top and that string should match, right? And then the next two are going to match as well. They should match, right? So you have, here you go, and then those strings should match, and then you get to playing the 4th string to the 5th string, or I should say the 3rd to the 2nd, but I think of strings downwards rather than upwards, but that's just how I do it. Anyway, so when you're playing these notes here, notice that you have to sort of go backwards. You have to go to the 4th fret instead of the 5th fret. And so that throws that sort of logic in a weird way, because we're expecting that the way that the strings are laid out, that it's going to be consistent. And that's the one inconsistency. But you notice that the consistency goes back when you have this thing. So what that does is that introduces this idea about what I consider scale degrees, because what happens is that if you're thinking about the E major, right? So we have this note that's played on the 2nd fret on the A string, right? So here you got this note here, the note underneath that, which is an octave, and then you have this note here. And so whenever people think about these chords, they don't really think about why the placement of the notes, or what it does in terms of the music theory, I guess, just like what's the significance of each of the notes. So let's talk about that for a second, because that'll make the comparison between the E major, the A major, and the D major make total sense, and that's going to allow you to sort of extrapolate that towards the rest of the fretboard, and we'll discuss how that goes. So then when you go from E major to A major, you notice that this changes a little bit. Now if I try to play E major pattern as an A, starting from the A position, then I get what's called an A minor, right? You don't have that nice like major sound. It's a minor sound. Okay, so let's talk about that. Okay, so when we look at E major, okay, so E major is going to get, what is this? Now let's talk about scale degrees for a second. So when you look at a major scale, so let's do a do re mi, and I'm going to start from E, right? So do re mi fa sol la ti do, right? So let's change that, right? So we're not thinking of the note names right now. Let's just talk about them in terms of with the open string being 1, let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7, 8, right? Okay, so what that does is that gives us what's called a scale degree. So we know that if we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So this note that we play along with the open E, we're playing that note, that's the 5th, right? So that's the 5th scale degree, right? And then 6, 7, 8, right? 8 octa, right? So that's the octave, same note as the E. They both are, they kind of stack on top of each other, right? Okay, so then, so that still does not include this note here, this mystery note, right? So let's take from here, do the same thing, do do, re, mi, right? So, right? Except for we're gonna fold this note back. We're gonna play, instead of this note here, we're gonna find that on the string that's below it, right? That fourth string down, right? So, right? So, do, re, mi, right? That's that third one. 1, 2, 3, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 is 1 because it's now repeating. 1, 2, 3. So now this is it's the third. And because it's major, it's the major third, right? Okay. Now if we look at the other two notes, right? What we're gonna do is we're gonna do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5. Okay, right? So this note here, this open, is the fifth, right? So you're duplicating the fifth. Oh, there's your octave, right? And then we know that the open E, that's an open E. So essentially you're doing root note, right? The note of, of the name, the fifth, the octave, so the root note, the major third, the fifth, and the octave. So it's basically just reinforcing. It reinforces that. So essentially you're playing 1, 3, 5 in terms of scale degrees. 1, 3, 5, 5, 1. Okay? So that's how that works. Now if we look at that weird shift, right? So because if we look at A, right? A is 1, 3, 5 because it's organized, right? It's the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, same thing, right? And then 6, 7, 8, right? So same thing, it sounds the same. And then we have, well, what is that? That's essentially, if you remember that, so the notes that are on this B string, the fifth string down or the second string up, is going to be slid forward one. So where you would have this note, this organization of the fingers here with 2, 2, and 1, now we have to think 2, 2 instead of 1. We slide that up, and now that's why that works that way, right? So, okay, and then, so now we have an understanding as to E major, why that looks like that, and why this has to lay this way. Now let's look at D, right? So this third string, okay, so we're gonna do, and now we know that the organization of, that's a fifth, right? So when that fifth hits here, and then we have, we know that the notes on that B string have to slide forward one. So it's the same organization as, right? And then now that note, whatever's relative to that note, so we know that this is the third, the root or the octave, and then the fifth. Sorry. Okay, so that being the case, when we do these notes, they're basically just the same organization. 1, 3, 1, 5 octave major third, 1, 5 octave major third, 1, 5 octave major third. It's the same organization going on the way down. Okay, so I group these notes in kind of the same vein. So what that does is that when I'm thinking of adding a different voicing, right? So if I'm doing E major, so I know that if I play A major, I can play that here. I can substitute it, right? Now, say I wanted to play with this kind of organization. Well, what I would do is I would find on the third string down or the fourth string up, this D string, I would look for A on the D string, which would be here at the 7th, right? So now I would create that same D pattern. I would create that at 9, 10, and 9, right? So essentially that would give me, and so, oh, I'm sorry. So that would give me, so this pattern here, oops, I'm sorry. So D is now A, because I played it up here, because here's my root note, so root, fifth, octave, major third. So now I get to use that same pattern of A, of E minor here to play A, of the A, or the D. Now the D chord is a like when you want to do sort of a these notes here, that's a little complicated. So check this out. So the A shape, where your hand can sort of lay flat. Now what's interesting about that is, like, say for this is like a really easy thing that I can sort of if I wanted to play a major chord, so say I wanted to play a D major, I mean that's easy. So I play this D here, and then I have these notes like I did here, right? 2, 2, and 2. I would just play it here 7, 7, 7. So now if I'm playing a D, right? And so, oh yeah, well, instead of playing this G here, maybe the other, accompaniment is, wanting to do an octave up. So I would just look for G on the A string, right? So here's G. And then I would be able to play these notes here at 12, 12, and 12, right? So anyway, so it's just a logic, right? So you just sort of kind of figure out from the scale degrees, you can sort of extrapolate from there. Okay, so then how does this work with the B chord, right? Well, funny enough, right? So if we play B, we know B is 2, 4, 4, 4 on the second string down, the fifth string up, right? So you have, so that's B. But remember, I mean, that's already kind of borrowing from what we already know, because A, so we find B and we have B major, right? And there you go. And so that's basically just kind of taken from there. Now, what about C? Now that is a weird way that the notes lay out on the fretboard, right? So here's really something that's very interesting, because now we're sort of not necessarily using the this methodology like we did with the E major, where you have a root note, root note, octave, root note, fifth, octave, major third, because that's the same organization as B, right? Root, fifth, octave, major third. Now it's this here is laid out in a different pattern, but we still have the same notes. It's just that they're organized a little bit differently. So let's talk about it. So C is our root note. That's 1, right? So let's talk about the scale degrees, and we're going to start with that do, re, mi major scale kind of thing. Like, so do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, right? Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then let's use the open part. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So we have that note here. 1, 2, 3, 1, 3, right? So 1, 3, 4, 5, 5, right? So here you've got your root, your major third, and then your octave. 1, 3, 5, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? So here's your 7. 7 is open B, and then C, octave. So you're still playing 1, 3, 5, or 1 major third, 5 octave. So that's how that works, right? Now, so this pattern here, these two fingers are laid out in such a way to give you the root note here, and then the third. So what happens is that if we want to play root note third on the first 3 strings, we can do that. I know this here because of this octave, right? So, okay. So if we know that organization, so I'm going to do, and then the open, right? So it's just skipping the, skipping the first fret, and it's going open. So I would just do skip the first fret. There we go. So I could play the same, but because my fleshy part of my finger doesn't sound great, it's nice to have, right? So we're not even talking about the note names yet, right? That's not what we're working. We're just trying to get the arrangement of what a major chord looks like, right? Okay, so you got C, that's there, right? And we counted it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? Okay. So this C, notice that open G looks very similar, right? 1, 3, 5, octave, and then you have the notes underneath it, right? So let's go. So we know 1, 3, 5, octave, and then this open B. Well, we know if we look at and if we know the note, right? So G, this note is open A, and then you have B, right? So we're playing. I'm sorry. Open B is a major third. So major third octave or root, right? So that's it. And then if we do the F, right, instead of playing F this way, we have. But what's really interesting is that if you look at, it's basically just this bar chord without the bar, and we're just playing these two notes here. So you're back to that arrangement. So the way that, and so if I wanted to do, so here's G. Oops, that's a G. That's a C minor. So here's G, right? Doing that same, right? So now you have that layout as an F moved up to a G. So F, G, next one is A, next one is B, C, D, right? So you have a bunch of different ways of being able to play stuff, right? So you can play the A here, you can play the A this way, you can play an A this way, so so there's a bunch of different ways. So that is going to give you a broader sense, and you can kind of mess around with how the major chords kind of lay out. So that we'll stop there because obviously you can sort of mess with that. And realistically, like the minors are really easy. We could probably get into that at the next one, but essentially everything is the major third just goes down one fret, right? So that's easy if you go here. If you pull that, so it's going to be 0, 2, 2, 0, 0, 0, right? So that's a minor, right? So, same thing with A, right? So we take this third and we move that down one, right? So instead of major, minor. Same thing with the D. The D looks like this, but instead of doing this 2, 3, 2, we do 2, 3, instead of 2, we do 1, right? And then so like B major, B minor, we throw in that same thing as, as A. This is where it gets a little difficult because this third here, you have to play the third back here for it to be a C minor. But nobody plays it like that because it's really difficult. They play C minor. Okay? So anyway, some fretboard logic, for my friend and for the rest of you guys. So That's going to be it for now. Tune in next time. We'll do some minor fretboard logic and go from there. All right. See you.